I was just 13 years old when my life shattered forever. Alone, betrayed, and carrying a secret no one was supposed to know. It all started when I was just 8 years old. My world turned upside down. My parents divorced because my mother had been cheating on my father. Years later, after their divorce, she married the man she had cheated on my father with. He became my stepfather. For a while, life seemed stable, but that stability shattered one evening in a way I'll never forget. My stepfather stumbled on something he was never supposed to see: my mother's medical results. He discovered my mother had HIV and hepatitis B. At first, he refused to believe it. He sat frozen, clutching the papers, but before confronting my mother, he went for his own test. The result came back positive. My mother had infected him. He stormed home, his anger boiling over. He demanded to know how long my mother had kept this from him. She tried to explain, saying she had been cheating, but she did not mean to infect him. His anger only grew. He shouted that she had destroyed his life, and that by the time he came back, she had better be out of his house for good. My mother stood there shaking, tears rolling down her face. She turned to me and said she would come back for me later. And just like that, she left. I was standing there alone. What happened later that night is something I'll never forget. And that was only the beginning of my nightmare. That night, after my mother left, my stepfather came home. He stumbled through the door, drunk. Anger and despair was written all over his face. I was only 13 years old, standing frozen in the living room, not knowing what to expect. He threw his jacket to the ground, kicked over a chair, and shouted into the empty house about how she had ruined his life. Then he turned to me. He accused me of being just like my mother, and for a moment, I thought he might hurt me. Instead, he punched the wall, breaking the plaster, and collapsed onto the couch, holding his head in his hands. For hours, he sobbed, repeating how she had lied to him and destroyed him. I sat quietly in the corner, too afraid to move or speak. Hours later, he stumbled into his room and slammed the door shut. A while later, while I was in my bed about to fall asleep, I heard my door creak open. My first thought was that my mother had returned to get me, but when the heavy footsteps echoed across the floor, I knew it wasn't her. It was my stepfather. At that point, fear gripped me. I didn't know what to expect. He approached my bed and lifted my blanket, and in his drunken state, he forced himself on me. He crossed a line that should never be crossed, a line that left me broken, confused, and carrying a secret too heavy for a 13-year-old to bear. Tears streaming down my face, I asked why he had done this to me. He said it was his revenge for what my mother had done. I wanted to tell someone, to scream for help, but I was too scared, too ashamed, and too alone. My mother never came back. No calls, no letters. My father didn't know what was happening. He had long moved on after the divorce. And my stepfather, the man who had broken me, was still there, drinking, bitter, and controlling. Weeks passed, and I started feeling sick. My stepfather finally took me to the hospital. That's where the doctor revealed I was pregnant. My stepfather didn't want anyone to know the truth. He kept me hidden. He told me I would stay in the house, and if anyone asked, I was sick. That was all I could say. Abortion was illegal where we lived. There was no escape, no undoing what had been done. Pregnancy is hard, even for a grown woman. But I was just a child. My body was small and fragile, yet I had to carry a weight far bigger than myself. Food was scarce. Sometimes he would throw a plate of rice or bread at me and disappear for days. I cried myself to sleep, begging God to take the burden away. And then the day came. I was home alone. The labor was excruciating. The pain was unbearable. I screamed for help, but only the walls answered. Hours later, I gave birth. Not to one child, not to two, but to 3. Triplets. In that moment, My life as a child ended forever, and my life as a mother began. I held them close, their tiny cries filling the silence of the house. I didn't even know how to hold a baby properly, let alone 3. My body was weak, my stomach empty, my mind broken. I was barely alive. But they needed me. I didn't know how I would feed them. I didn't know how I would raise them. And somehow, I had to survive. All I knew was that my life would never be the same again. When my stepfather came in, drunk and confused, he couldn't believe what he saw. He looked at me, looked at the babies, and then looked away, unable to process what had happened while he was gone. For the first time, fear and guilt replaced his usual rage. But only for a moment. He still treated us like a burden, leaving scraps of food and disappearing for days. He wanted them hidden, just like he had hidden me. He warned me that no one must ever know. If anyone asked, he said I must say the babies weren't mine, and I had better understand the consequences. The babies cried constantly. Neighbors began to notice. Then one day, a neighbor knocked on the door. My stepfather's face twisted with rage. He whispered harshly, telling me not to open the door. He threatened that if I said a word, neither I nor the babies would live. The neighbor's voice came from the door, asking if anyone was inside and if the babies were all right. The knocking grew louder, and in that moment, he realized the secret was slipping out of his control. Furious that someone dared to knock and question him, he flared with rage and grabbed the nearest object as he walked towards the door. What happened next will shock you. The story continues in the next video. Stay tuned.